right, all right. So hello to anyone that is watching this after the program time. I'm going to quickly go over what I had just said to the participants. So today we are going to be working in Blender and learning how to make miniatures, how to hard model, and a little bit of sculpting, just trying to kind of familiarize ourselves with the Blender program. The biggest part about it is learning a lot of little shortcuts, so it may be helpful to rewatch this video. Looks like we do have someone in the waiting room. But we are going to be working in Blender, and we'll probably talk a little bit right at the end about scaling, because you will be able to, anything that you decide to make from watching this program, participating in this program, you'll be able to get printed at the library for free, and that does not count towards your 3D printing limit of the month. Just make sure you put in a note that you went to this program and you can get that printed. But yeah, so we're gonna hop right into it. And I'm just going to share my screen. Okay. And Josh, can you see this okay?
Yep.
Okay. So, and if anyone can't see something, just put it in the chat. So all I can see currently is my Blender tab, so that's what I'm going to be focusing on, but just let me know if you have any questions. So when you open up Blender, it may look like this, or it may look a little different depending on the version that you have. I think they just recently released 3.0. But if you're any version other than 2.9, 3.0, it'll have, at the very least, different splash art. But I believe anything from 2.8 and on, all of the buttons should be in mostly the same places. If you don't have Blender yet, or you're about to download it, I will say if you'd like to make sure it's the exact same version as what I have, on the Blender website, you can go to a section for downloading previous versions. So if you just want to make double sure that it's the same as what you're following along with, you can get it that way. Otherwise, the default will download with the current one, 3.0. So one thing I will say is kind of important is if this pops up, this is the kind of quick setup splash screen. You do want to try and make sure that the left select is on. That button just enables, like, it makes it a little bit more intuitive, I think, for people. Usually selection is done with the left mouse button. Some people, for other streamlining reasons, maybe they're using a stylus or something, they'll use the right, but usually the left is the easiest to go with. And yeah, if you would like to change it to light mode or anything else like that, you can do that right here. There's other ways to get to these settings, but you can just keep it here. So what you do to get into the program is you can just click anywhere off. Just click anywhere else other than the splash screen, and you should see this with the default cube in the middle. And so it's kind of a little disorienting. If you've never worked in 3D before, or even if you have worked in 3D before, sometimes this is a big step. Going from something like Tinkercad, where you're only working with just solid shapes, just objects, whereas this one you can get into polygon modeling and sculpting and things that are a little bit more intricate and can be a little difficult. But what we're going to get started with is just kind of introducing a couple of the things in the program. Up here in the right-hand corner is the little gizmo. And if you click on any of those little circles, any of those spheres, it will snap to a specific side of this cube that you can see. I tend to like having the red line, which is the x-axis, going from left to right, because we usually think of the x-axis as left to right, and then the y as top to bottom. So that would be this view, this top view. One thing that we're usually not used to is the z-axis, which is that third dimension that it adds in there. If you are working with a mouse, one thing that's really helpful is being able to use the scroll wheel. The scroll wheel going in and out will zoom in and out, and if you hold down on the scroll wheel while moving your mouse around, you can kind of navigate this, this field a little bit better. So you can see things from other angles, or you can do the same thing with the gizmo, just holding that with the left button, or the left mouse button. So yeah, sometimes it just takes a little while to get used to being in the program, but we are going to start out with something that shouldn't be too difficult. It's going to be something that, for the most part, you could do a lot of it in something like Tinkercad, but then we're going to kind of show you why Blender is a little bit more special and how you can go that extra step. So what we're going to do is, because this is making miniatures, we kind of want to have a reference. That's kind of the easiest way to get going with 3D modeling, because if you ask someone to, even if it's just something as simple as drawing, if you ask someone to draw a table, they may be able to draw a table, but maybe the proportions are a little bit off. And if you ask someone to model a table, the proportions might be off too. So having a photo reference is something that can be really helpful. So the way that we're going to get this photo reference in here, and I'm actually just going to switch to this direction, is we're going to go to Add, this Add button right at the top here, while we're in Object mode, which is the default mode that should be in there when you first get in there. We'll go to Add, and then Image and Reference. And I'm just going to go to this folder that I made just for this. And I know this is the table that I was planning on showing you guys, so I'm going to click on that, and it'll open up in the program. Now, something that is not super intuitive is the way that you move things around. So right now, this image is selected. As soon as you put something on the plane, it'll be selected. If for some reason you clicked off, it's not selected, you can just click on it again with your left mouse button. So anything that has, I don't know if you can quite see it, but there's a faint orange outline. You can see it more when you've selected like the cube. But anything that has the faint orange outline will be something that's selected. So I'm going to select the reference image, and what I'm going to do is I like to call it grab, because you're going to use the G button. So you click the G button, and then you can just move your mouse as if you were holding on to it. When you're ready to set it down, you can just click again, and it'll release it for you. If you're thinking, oh, this is kind of big, it's going to get in my way, another thing you can do is select it again. You'll click the S button for size, and you'll see this kind of like arrow show up, and you can size that down. That's all good. And another thing that might be useful, for this particular one, we may not need it, but I'll go ahead and show it to you, would be rotate, which would be R. And if you're looking at it from this angle, it'll always rotate on that axis. So if I were looking at it from this angle, obviously it's a flat image, I'm not going to see it from the side, but if I start to rotate it, it'll rotate it like it's rocking back and forth. So just kind of keep that in mind. So another thing that can be useful is having something be locked while you're working. So you don't want to accidentally, be moving this around and click on this, and then you start, transforming this and doing crazy things with this. So what you can do is, if you go up to the right-hand corner and click on Filter, there is a little button right here, and that's selectable. It's not turned on by default. There, I believe, is a setting where you can make that default, but you will just disable that. So now, no matter what you do, you can't click on it. So we are going to get started with kind of modeling this table. It's a really simple table. It's the easiest way to get started with this kind of thing is breaking it up into what shapes these are. So for this is just going to be 5 different cubes. So first thing we want to do is let's do the tabletop. So If we want to size it down, you'll notice it'll always go proportionally, so it'll take down every angle at the same time. If instead you really just wanted it to get shorter, like this is, you would still do S for size, but then you would select which axis you want to make it shorter on. So for this, I would do Z, because that's going to be this blue line. And when I do that, now it's just shrinking it in that direction. So I'll kind of just make it a good thickness. And maybe I want to make this a little bit bigger overall, and it'll be going in all directions now because I'm just doing regular proportional editing. And now I'm just going to adjust it a little bit more now that I've made it bigger, and I'm going to make it thinner again. If you wanted to, and I'm going to rotate with that mouse wheel again, if you wanted to make it a little bit wider or deeper, and you just wanted to kind of see it from a different angle, you can move around. So I'm going to show you how sizing on the x-axis looks, and then sizing on the y-axis. It's going to work the exact same as the other one. So now that one's super easy, totally done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually just do the same thing that I did with sizing, but I'm going to do G for grab. And normally when you grab, it'll just move it around, but I want it to stay on that same middle point. So I'm going to just click Z the same as I did when I was sizing it, and I'm just going to grab it and slide it up. And now I'm going to work on making the legs. So we didn't have to add this cube because when you open Blender, it always has a cube in it. But the same way that we added the photo, we're going to add another cube. So when you go to add, there is a bunch of different options here. We had done image and reference before. Now we're going to do mesh and then cube. So I'm going to size this down until it looks like pretty proportional with how big it looks in the picture. And then what I'm going to do is I want it to stay at that same height. So I'm just going to move it on the x-axis. And now there's a couple different ways that you can go about making this the right height. So you can do it like before where you just stretch it on the z-axis, but you'll see that it's because it's going proportionally, because the center point of it is right in where that little orange dot is. It's going to grow on either side of that. So that can be one way to do it, and then you can go in and move it around, size it differently. But what I'm going to show you how to do is to move the vertices to actually stretch it with just one point or a couple of points. So what you're going to do to get into edit mode is you're going to click tab, and you'll see now you can see all of the points of this. So these are all of the points on the box. So there's 8 points because it's a cube. So there's 4 vertices on each side, or the top and the bottom. So the way that you can move it is by selecting the vertices that you want to move, and then doing that same grab with G and then Z to move it up. The one issue you'll find, and I'll show you here, is that you only did one part of it. So one way to combat that is I'm going to Control Z to undo. That's going to be your best friend when you're in Blender, when you're learning, is I'm going to go up here to the top right corner where these 2 boxes are, and it's going to say toggle X-ray. So now you can kind of see through these boxes, and now when I'm selecting these like you would normally, drag to select, it's selecting both of them. So now when I grab and move on the Z-axis, just make it a little bit taller, now it will work properly. So I'm going to move this over a little bit just so it's all inside the table, and I'm going to check it from this direction. I'm glad I did. So now that I'm seeing it from this direction, I'm realizing it's right in the middle. So I'm going to go ahead and move this over so that it's in the right spot. And if we ever don't want to see things overlapping like they are right now with the X-ray, we can always turn it off when we don't need it. So now that's in there. And what I'm going to show you next is a little bit of using some modifiers. So we could just do something called duplicate, which is if you click Shift D, it will duplicate it. So you could duplicate it and then click grab and then click X to move it over and try and make sure that you have it lined up properly. And you could do that, and that's perfectly fine. Sometimes you want things to not be exactly in the same spot, but sometimes you do. So for a table, you do kind of want them to be in the same spot, like mirrored from each other. So I'm going to show you how to use the mirror modifier. So I am going to go over here. So this is selected, and I'm going to go over here to the modifier properties, and I'm going to click add modifier. And a lot of the ones that you're going to use are going to be in generate. The physics ones are usually not going to be used unless you're going to be doing animations that have some kind of particles that are being made, like some water particles or dust particles, things like that. Sometimes you will use cloth physics in 3D printing as well, but usually you're going to be using a lot of the generate stuff, maybe a couple of the deforms. So you're going to start by clicking on the mirror modifier. So right now, it looks like nothing happened, and that is because the origin for this leg is right in the middle of it, so it's actually flipping on itself, and because it's a square, or I guess a rectangle, cube, it's just flipping over itself and it looks the same. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to Object, and then Set Origin, and then Origin to 3D Cursor. And the 3D cursor is this little bullseye right here. And now it's going to be flipping over the center of what we're working on. So now we know this is exactly the same distance over this way and the same distance that way. It's just on the other side of the axis. So now what we can do is I'm going to turn in this direction, and I'm going to keep the same mirror modifier on, but I'm going to click on y-axis. So now it's flipping on the y-axis, but because we have these both selected, it's going to do all 4 of them for us. And I'm going to click apply. So right now, our computer is really only running as if we have one object. So when you go back, I just tabbed into edit mode with that tab button, there's still only one object here. It's just kind of showing us what it would be like if we had all 4 of them. So right now, our computer doesn't have to generate all of these polygons, which right now, since there's only 8, it's not a big deal if there's 4 times 8. But when you're working with really detailed things that are thousands and hundreds of thousands of polygons, not applying the modifiers and just working with them the way they are here like this can actually be really helpful. It also means that before we apply it, we can edit it however we want, and the other ones will do the exact same thing. So obviously I'm going to click escape to cancel out what I was doing because I don't want the legs to look like that. But we are going to go ahead and apply it. Or actually, before we apply it, I'm going to show you how to do another modifier, and we can see how different modifiers can affect each other. So the next one we're going to do, and this is kind of what takes it into the next level of being a little bit more in depth in comparison to something like Tinkercad, would be the Boolean modifier. So I am going to, or not Boolean, sorry about that, the bevel modifier, Booleans for cutting holes out of things, which we may talk about in one of the next projects that we do. But we have this leg selected right now, and it's got the mirror modifier and the bevel modifier on it. And what we can do is kind of turn up the amount. So when we turn up the amount, it's how deep the bevel goes. And when you turn up the segments, it's how many different segments that's being divided up into. So I'm going to turn this down just a little bit, just so it looks a little bit smoother and a little bit more worn, because when you keep things completely sharp, sometimes they just look less real. So if we're making something that's going to be used for a miniature display, we kind of want them to emulate real life as much as we can. So And with this one, it's not going to be prevalent, but you can reorder these. You can reorder the modifiers on the side here like I did. Obviously, the difference between applying a bevel first and applying it later isn't going to show because no matter what, you're going to mirror it and it's going to look the same. But just know that sometimes they can affect each other. So if something kind of bugs out and looks weird, maybe moving the modifiers around can help you a little bit. And I'm actually going to take the bevel off right now because I do want, or actually we'll make another bevel for the tabletop because maybe we want that one to be a little bit different. So I'm going to go to the tabletop, do the same kind of bevel there, and just turn that down, turn that up a little bit, just so we can kind of have those like finishing edges to it. And there we go. So now we've got this side table. And so that one was pretty good, pretty simple to kind of get you introduced to, oops, sorry about that, get you introduced to the different buttons in Blender. And then, so now that we've got this all done, I'm going to go ahead and go over to the side over here, and I'm going to just hide it with these eye buttons. So I'm going to now show you how to do something that has a little bit of sculpting in it. So I'm going to just go ahead and put down a cube. And I'm going to get my reference image. So the same as before, add and mesh cube, and then add image reference. And what I'm going to make for you guys is a little birthday cake. So this one is kind of a good project to start with because it's really recognizable, which means it's easier to achieve, but it's also organic. It's not a hard shape like the table where you can just kind of put a couple of different cubes together and call it a table. With this, there's some like organic stuff going on, the way that the icing falls, the texture on the cake, things like that. So what I'm gonna do here is I want to make this cake shaped. So right now it's just a cube, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get a better angle on this. Maybe let's get a top angle. And I'm going to turn on X-ray again so that I can see those vertices. I'm going to tab into edit mode. So now I've got all of these visible to me. So I've got those two selected. I'm going to go back to the top. And I'm going to just kind of curve this in because we just want this edge over here where it's kind of, it was a circle cake before it got sliced. But the proportions are still a little off. So this is kind of a very small cake slice. So what I'm going to do is just take that G again, and you can move it along an axis if you want to, but because I want to move it on the X and Y axis, I'm just going to go ahead and just move it freely and just kind of freehand it. This is a good object for that kind of thing though, because it's very organic, it's I have a man-made object that is then cut by a man, so it's not always going to be perfect looking. And honestly, the less perfect it looks, sometimes the better and more realistic it is. So I'm going to take it out to about there. And I'm going to go back to that front view again. And I'm going to just do that thing we talked about, the rotation. So if we have R, which is our rotation button. So we have it selected and we do R. I want it to, right now it's going to, go back and forth on the X axis, but I want it to spin around. So I want to do R and then Z to kind of face it towards me. So right now that's going to be facing towards me. And what I want to do is I want to add a couple of slices in this object. And when I add the slices in the object, we'll be able to move them around a little bit easier because you can see here that there's kind of different layers to the cake. So this brings in a good tool. So while we're in edit mode, you may have noticed that there's a couple of different options over here. So we're going to start with the loop cut. And automatically the loop cut will just go, it'll snap to the middle of whatever you're working on. And right now it's going to be on the sides of the cake piece. But if I go up a little bit, you'll see that it starts to do that. So it'll cut in those directions, but we don't really need that right now. So I'm going to go back. We're going to do this. What you can do is if you want it to be perfectly cut into more than 2 pieces at the same time, is if you go up to the top left-hand corner, there's a place to change the number of cuts. So we want there to be, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cuts, or 5 cuts, to make sure that there's the right number of layers. So I'm going to click 5, and then it'll still show up as the same, but when you click it, it'll have all those there. Now, what I'm going to do is right now, what we've been selecting with is vertices. So we are selecting these points. But say you just really want this face right here to come out, right? You'll change the selection option over here with face select. So we've got face select on, and what I want to do is I just want to make sure that the icing layers are just a little bit thinner. So I'm going to make sure that I have this selected all the way around. And then I'm going to do that size again, and then Z because I want to smush it down. And I'm just going to make that a little bit smaller. And I'm also going to, now that I've made it shorter, I want to make it bigger because the icing kind of bulges out a little bit. So we've made it shorter. Now we're just going to do a regular size up. And what you'll see is it starts tugging at the other ones. And that's because they're connected. And we only have a very small number of vertices on this right now. If I were to make this a whole lot more dense with a lot of different polygons in it, it wouldn't affect the other ones around it quite as much. But for right now, that's totally fine. We're just going to have it do that. And I'm going to do the same thing for this layer of icing. I'm going to squish it down and make it a little bit bigger. And then I'm just going to bring the whole thing up just a little bit. Here we go. All right, so now this is what our cake looks like. So far, doesn't quite look like a cake. So what we can do next is we are going to kind of mess a little bit with sculpting. So we've done pretty much everything that we can so far with a small number of vertices. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a subdivision modifier. So we're going to go over to this modifier tab, that's the wrench, and add the modifier to do subdivision surface. So it might look something like this when you do that. That's obviously not what we want. What that's doing is it's adding these and then pulling them together. So you're gonna, when you do the subdivision, you want to change it over to the simple subdivision. So that's going to add in more points without it moving where the other points are. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to change this up maybe to about 3. And then I'm going to go ahead and apply that because I do need to have all those polygons. So if you go into edit mode again, you'll see now that it looks like this, but the actual mesh itself doesn't look any different. It just has more detail to it. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off X-ray because now we're going to be working on sculpting, and I'm just going to straighten this out so it's facing the right way. So we're going to go over to the sculpting tab now. So now that we're in the sculpting tab, it may change the view that you're in. So don't worry if you get disoriented. You can just click on the gizmo to change back. So there's a whole lot of different brushes and things to work with over here. I find myself using smooth a lot, as well as inflate and draw and grab. Grab is going to be very helpful. And so this is going to be a little bit more if you're used to like working with physical things like clay or other things like that. This might feel a little bit more familiar because you can kind of get in there and it's not just as like mathematic looking. It's more natural feeling. So we're going to kind of go in here and I'm going to just zoom in. And what you can do is you could just go in and start smoothing it out, or sorry, that's the inflate. You could go in and kind of start smoothing it out and you'll notice that's a little bit more of a natural angle. Obviously, this is still a fairly low poly, so it's going to kind of crunch in a little bit on those edges. And the reason it's doing that is because it has to make do with the small number of polygons it has. So if you start working on it and you're like, I just really wish I had a little bit more detail, you can absolutely do that. So I'm going to undo and I'm going to go over and I'm actually going to go ahead and add in another subdivision. This time you can keep it on the Catmull-Clark option because you've already added those subdivisions. There's already a precedent of where you want those points to be. So it's not going to be quite as dramatic. So I'm going to go ahead and add in another layer of that, see if that helps us a little bit. Yeah, and that's a little bit better looking. If you're noticing that it's crimping in too much on you, you can undo and you can turn that strength down. Or if you're saying, I really want to be smoothing a lot more, you can always turn up the radius of how big the brush is. So I'm just going to kind of go around smoothing some of these corners and making this a little bit more natural looking and organic looking. So, and what we really want to round off is this point right here because it was coming from a round cake and we kind of started with more triangular shape. I'm going to turn up that strength so that it gets me a little bit closer to where I'm wanting to go. And don't feel weird if it starts to look weird. Anyone who's done art projects before will tell you there's kind of a weird phase before you get to the point that you really want, especially in sculpting. So one thing I kind of notice here is there's some raised areas on the icing. So I'm going to go in and just kind of go in with the draw and just kind of add in some texture right on the top there. And going to then go back in, smooth it out a little bit. Just kind of go in and mess with it. And the next thing I'm going to work on is getting that definition between the layers. So I can see right here there's one on the top and that top layer is kind of thick. So I'm going to take the crease tool and I'm going to turn this down a little bit while I'm working on it because you kind of want the crease to be small. And I'm just going to kind of go along here and add that crease. And if while you're working on this, you're like, oh, it's kind of laborious to go over this, bunch of times to go all the way around it. What you can do, I'm going to undo to show you this, is turn on the symmetry at the top. So I do have it set up so that my left and right is the x-axis, but if you are working on it in this direction, just make sure you have it on the right one. So I'm going to turn on the symmetry on the x-axis, and I'm just going to go back in, start doing that line again that I was working on. And I'm going to stop right here because that's where the icing on the outside of the cake would come back down again. And if we turn, we can tell that that did not work. So that must not be the correct axis. So I am going to turn off the x-axis. And it may also be, one thing that could come up is we've rotated this a couple of times. So if you ever notice that you are using the mirror modifier or any other modifier and it's not quite working right, what you can do is click Control-A, and this is going to apply, or you can apply all those transformations that we did, all of the different rotations. So now when I go back in and start working on that, oops, it's now going to be on both sides because now it knows where that x-axis was, because before it was just acting like it was wherever it was when we brought it into the scene. But now it recognizes that the object is right here, and this is where it is in relation to the x-axis. So I'm just gonna go in, kind of smooth things out, inflate a couple things, do a little bit of drawing, just to kind of make that make sense, because this is just like a fun icing on top. And I'm gonna go ahead and do the crease again. And this one's gonna be a little bit smaller because it's just the inside icing. And then I'm gonna do the same thing one more time. And it's just gonna be a small little icing. And that may not be perfect, but you can kind of see that it's got the different layers. And that's gonna work for us. Now, a couple other things that you can do to kind of get things a little bit more realistic is you can add on your little whipped cream here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start with a cone because this is going to be something that has a point. So I'm just going to start with a point. And really all that is whipped cream or icing that's coming out of a point and then swirling. So we just have to create that swirl. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit so I can see this. I'm going to turn on X-ray mode so I can see things, tab into edit mode again, and we're going to select these vertices. And what we're going to do now is extend it. So this one is a shortcut we haven't used yet, so that's going to be the E button, and that's going to extend down. And I'm just going to E again, just do this a couple times just to kind of get point across. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this top section right here, and then I'm going to actually I'm going to kind of shape it a little bit first. So we want this to be a little bit fatter because we usually dollop it towards the bottom. So one thing you can do is you can click on proportional editing. So right now this is only affecting this one, but if you click on proportional editing, you'll see that it starts affecting the ones around it. And if you use your scroll wheel, it will select more. So I'm going to leave it the way it is now. I'm going to select these top ones and we're going to click rotate again. And it's just going to go back and forth again. So we're going to do the Z axis. And as you can tell, the proportional editing is still on even with rotation. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rotate this. So now we have a really nice spiral. And then I'm just going to do control, or I'm going to just click A. And when you click A, I can size it down because I just want to kind of get that little spirally edge on there. And then I'm going to size it down and then bring it down on top of the cake. And there's a couple on them here, so I'm going to line them up, same as they are on the cake. And what we can do is do some free rotation here. And what you'll see is it's moving around this dot because that's the center of where it used to be. Now that we've, squashed it down, that's not where it is anymore. So if we want to reset where the origin is, we can do origin to geometry, and now it's going to rotate around itself. So we're going to bring that down. And then I'm going to go ahead and do that Shift D to duplicate again. And we're going to get another one on there. And I'm going to move this over so we can get one more to fit. And I'm going to just size these all down because I really would like to have 3 of them on there. All right, and now we've got that. And I'm going to show you another one of these modifiers that can help this look a little bit more realistic. So right now, if we went into sculpting, it's not going to react really well to us because it's just so low poly. But if we try and do a subdivision, it's still just not quite looking right. So what I'm going to do is I really want this facade of those curls in there, but I really don't want those points to be where they are because it's not working for this model. So I am going to go ahead and I'm just going to select one for now to show you. And I'm going to click Add Modifier, and we're going to do a remesh. So when we do a remesh, that's basically just taking the information of what this looks like and changing where the vertices are and cleaning it up for us. So the voxel size is going to be how detailed it is. You can go click down to make it a little bit more detailed and be closer to how it looked before. I would not suggest going down too far. 0.02 is the lowest I would go. After that, it starts to kind of slow your computer down. Even if you have a really nice computer, sometimes it will just freak out and Blender will crash. That's another thing is you definitely want to be saving as you're going because things happen. So I'm going to go ahead and just apply this, and I'm going to go ahead and do that to the other ones as well, just to kind of get them on there. I'm just repeating my action. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually select this, and then I'm going to hold Shift and click on this one and this one. So then I've selected all of them. You can also just do like that and do the box select like everything else. And I'm going to click right click and then join. Oops, sorry. I had not applied that modifier yet. So the reason you just saw that it looked like it went back to how it was before is I did not apply the modifier before joining things. So you want to make sure that those modifiers are all complete before you put things together. So I'm going to select all these and join. And now you can tab into edit mode. You can see it's pretty detailed, but they're not in the places they were before. So it's going to be a little bit easier to sculpt on this. So you can kind of go in with your draw and bring out those spirals a little more. And you could just do these just from a ball if you wanted to. I personally like that they have a little bit of texture to them already and they have that little bit of spiral to them, just because it gives me kind of a guide on where to go. But you just kind of want to drag it down and follow these lines a little bit, but also, you know, be a little bit organic with it because these are very inorganic that we started with. So I'm just going to kind of add in those. And now we've got those little spirals. And I'm just going to quickly go in and do that on this one as well. One thing you could do is you could just do it once and then do that Shift D to duplicate again. But I want these to look all different. I want them to have a little bit of dimension to them. So I'm just going to do that same process over again. And we're just going to go around. And this one I made a little bit looser, and you can tell it's a little bit more bulbousy. So I'm going to go back in with that crease tool. And you can kind of switch between the different tools, see which one works the best for you to get that result that you're looking for. I kind of like the way that the first one turned out, but you know, you can always try different ways. If you want to try using a different one, like, oh, I really want to try clay. What does clay do? This is a good way to test them out because you're just trying to make a textured swirl. So depending on how you feel like doing it, this one's kind of clumpy and I'm like, oh, I'm not really sure that's what I want. So maybe I could try layer and we'll, you know, mess around with layer and see how that one looks. This one's coming out okay. Still think I like that first one, so I think the draw might be the best option for making the little icing swirls. But you just go in there, and if you're like, oh, this has a really rough edge, you can still go back with that smoothing tool, and it's all good. So I really, really don't like this one, so I am gonna go back in with the tools that I liked and fix these. Alrighty. And say I really don't like that there's not enough of a peak on here, right? You could go in with the blob tool and just kind of circle around the same spot until there's a peak that comes up, but it's still not going to be very pointy. So what you can do is do the grab and kind of pull that up. So I just want to pull these up so that there's a little bit of whipped cream, that's just kind of that peak, you know? All right, so now we've kind of got this birthday cake going here. So I am going to just put it on a quick plate and then we're gonna put it on the table so we can kind of see everything all put together. And then I'm gonna kind of quickly go over a couple of things of how to make these miniatures actually work for you. So I am going to, for the plate, I'm gonna just start with a cylinder. Cylinder comes in. I'm going to view it from the top because that's kind of how we view plates and it's easier to envision. And I'm just going to size that up so that it's bigger than the cake, but now we see that it's way taller than the cake. So I'm going to do that size and Z again. All right. And now we can see that's where the everything is. Now what I want to do is I want that kind of lip that you get with a plate. And I think the best way to go about that is I am going to go into edit mode, face select, just select this top layer, and then this is one we haven't done yet is delete. So we're going to click on it to select it, and then we're going to click X, and then the original thing that'll pop up that you'll want to click is vertices. Don't click that. This isn't an edge either, it's a face. So we want to click delete face. So now we've kind of got a little bit of a lip. Now you could go in, and select these ones that you want to do and, you know, size them up however you want to. But if it's easier for you to select things by selecting a loop, this is how you would do it. So normally when you click on it, it would just click on one. But if you hold Alt while you do it, it will select that entire loop. So as long as it's a complete loop, it'll select all of them. So I am going to, size that up, but right now it's proportionally editing a little bit too much for me. So I'm going to scroll down to make that a little bit smaller so that it doesn't affect the other one as much. And so that's a good kind of lip. And then I'm going to do that E for extend again. And it just kind of loosey-goosey extends, but I'm going to click Z so it just extends up. And then S to size one more time, just so we have a little bit of a lip. And now, what you may notice is that this is completely thin. It's just one layer. There is no enclosing. So we're going to work on adding a modifier. And we're going to do a solidify modifier. And what that'll do is it can add thickness to your model. So now there's a little bit of thickness on the plate. All right. And then I'm going to apply that. And then I'm going to just move it up so that I can make sure that the cake is actually on the plate, but not all the way through it. Perfect. All right, so this is just kind of a simple way to get into modeling, kind of how to incorporate sculpture into it and sculpting into it. Usually you're seeing this at very high res because you're seeing it right up in your face. And this is probably not as big as you're going to print it out. So I usually like to right click shade smooth because usually after things have been 3D printed, they're going to be smoothed out a little bit and it'll kind of see how it'll look when it's finished. So now we have this, and I'm going to quickly show you how to export it and then do a quick talk about what kind of sizing would make sense for the thing that you're using this for. And then I will take a couple questions if we have a second at the end. All right, so for this, we want to, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all 3 of the parts. And I'm doing that because technically we do have this table still in here. But right now I just want the cake. And so I'm going to do File, Export, STL. That's usually the easiest one to do, and that's usually what we take when we are doing that for 3D printing. So we're going to do STL. And the biggest thing you want to do is if you have more than just what you want in your STL file, you click selection only. So the things that we just selected are the only things that are going to come out. And I'm just going to go down here and name it cake. And it'll add the STL at the end when you do it, so it's no problem. If you did not apply any of your modifiers yet, it's default to be selected as apply on, so you don't have to do that. It'll do that for you. And then I'm just going to click export. And for this, this is something that let's say maybe you want this cake for dollhouse. Most dollhouses are going to have a designated sizing that they go by. If you're doing something that's a traditional dollhouse, I think they tend to be 1/12. If you're talking about something like a Barbie dollhouse, that's 1/6, or any other fashion doll. If you are printing this out for something that's going to go on a D&D table, it kind of depends on the exact dimensions, but I do believe that's about 1/64. So you'll basically just figure out how big this item would be in real life. So maybe the cake is 4 inches, and then let's just add another 1/2 inch for the plate and the frosting on top. So if it was originally, let me pull out my calculator, if it was originally 4.5 inches and you're using this for a Barbie doll, you would divide that by 6 because it's 1/6 size, and then it would be 3/4 of an inch tall. So you can size it to be proper to what you want printed in Blender, but sometimes it doesn't correlate to our 3D printing programs. So when you send it in to us, you can always just put in the comments, I want this to be 3/4 of an inch tall, or I want this to be however many millimeters tall. And that's kind of just the easiest way to go about sizing. Usually, if it's a piece of furniture that you made from a reference, they'll have the sizes, and you can just divide that by however many inches you need to divide it by. And usually that'll make it so it at least makes sense in the space that you're using it. So yeah. All right, so that is pretty much the gist of what I was going to show you guys today. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and I am back in here. All right, so did anyone have any questions while I was going? Let's see. Oh, yes. Okay, so I see that you answered the question about the hotkeys. That's good. Usually there is, there's a couple of different, like, little charts online that you can find that have a list of all of the different shortcuts. The ones that I went over were G for grab, R for rotate, S for size, and then also E for extend if you're going to be extending an item. I think that's all of them. There is also T for twist, but you use that in very few circumstances. And then X for delete. Let's see. Oh, yes. Thank you. That's a good hotkey reference. And that's very, very helpful for getting into the program and first starting out with it. And yeah, so anything that you make in this, that you learned how to make in this program, and it doesn't have to be a table and it doesn't have to be a piece of cake. It can just be something that you learned how to make because you watched this program. So if it's something that was hard modeled or something that was sculpted, anything that would work as a miniature, you can get a few of those printed. I think we set the limit to I can get 3 miniatures printed, and that won't count towards your limit. See, sometimes you had selections where you had to roll over to see what they were. Smooth, for example. Can you turn on the names? So were you not able to see the menus when I clicked on them? Was that Josh?
So they were talking about the menus. I was able to see what you clicked on and stuff like that. Were you meaning like when you clicked on the menu in the tool that it would show you the name of the tool, like when hovering over it or something?
I'm not sure. So here, I'm gonna pull it up again real quick just to see if we can see what we're talking about. So when I have these selected, when I right click, can you see that menu, Josh?
Yeah, I can see the menu. So Fran was like, not when you click, but to see all the options available.
Oh, okay. Sort of. There's a couple different ways to go about it. I believe, oh God, what number is that? There is, and that may be on the hotkeys as well, but there is a, oh gosh, I just keep clicking the wrong one. There is a button where you can kind of search, and you can search all of the functions that you can do. So you can search things that you would get with this menu, but also things that would come up in any of the other menus. Gosh, I wish I knew the exact button for that. It's one of the F buttons at the top. And that's probably also in that document that Josh put in the chat. So I would give that a look over, and that might be something that would be helpful. But yeah, hotkeys are definitely your friend. So yeah, all right, I'm gonna stop that share again. And was there any other questions?
I don't see anything so
that
far.
might be all. But we do have another minute or two, so if you do have any questions, that's totally fine.
And it's you once you unmute and ask, you're more than welcome to for the end of the program part.
Now that we're past the instructional part, if there's anything that you feel like you can't type out, because I know sometimes it takes a while to type something out or it's hard to explain, feel free to unmute and you can definitely ask that. We'll probably give it another minute or so. But I do want to say thank you guys for coming. And I am actually going to go ahead and send that poll out right now. So it should just pop up. And all it's asking is just kind of how you heard about the program. And it really helps with our stats to kind of see how people heard about things. I know that I usually hear about them. Even though I work here, I still hear about them from that the emails that go out every month. So, but thank you guys so much for stopping by. And I am going to go ahead and end the meeting in just a moment. So yeah, thank you. And if you do have any questions, feel free to come into any of the creative experience spaces and someone can help you. And we can help you get your project printed. All right. Thank you guys.